Right then, as I said, I've sprayed all our canopy area all nice and black, which primes it up to have the black on the inside, so it looks like it's been sprayed black on the inside. There was another little canopy sort of section, well, glass area, which I've just stuck in there. Pretty much the same thing as our front canopy bits here. One other thing I did do, okay, which was an example of the whole shrinkage with green putty and Mr. Surfacer, was after spraying our front bit black, I decided to have a quick look and sprayed up our seam lines underneath and on top, and found that I had a bit of shrinkage. Okay, so I just quickly did a bit of sanding and sanded out that little tiny bit of shrinkage. So it's nice to have that quick check just to make sure you don't get any shrinkage. But what needs to happen now is we are now preparing for the spray stage. So you've probably noticed I've got a glove on, okay, because from here on out, if there's no more problems after priming, we are spraying. So we need to make sure this model stays contaminant free. So we want to clean this up now, make sure it's all nice and clean, no sanding dust, no fingerprints, and once it's all clean, we want to make sure we're holding it with a glove as much as possible so we don't recontaminate. So the way I like to clean my model up is you simply get a nice toothbrush, a bit of moisture, i.e. a bit of water, okay, and all you do is you give your model a brush, okay, and what this brushing is doing, and the water, it's just cleaning out all your panel lines, because in your panel lines, that is where the say all your sanding dust is gonna like accumulate, okay. You might have sweaty hands as well, or any other chemicals that you've used, and what happens is whatever sweat or any kind of moisture you've used reacts with like the sanding dust, and it really can dig in to your recessed panel lines, into your riveting and all those kind of things, and it results in your recessed panel lines ending up being sort of filled in at the same time. And what we're doing is we're basically just brushing our panel lines nice and clean, as well as giving the model a bit of a clean at the same time, okay, and we just do that all the way around the model, giving it a nice clean. Okay, now just to speed things up, I've just done that wing. I also like to come along with some kitchen paper towels, okay, best to buy the more better quality ones, and we can just rub off this moisture, this water that we've just brushed on, brush it, we can wipe it off, okay, so we've wiped it off, and as you can see, pretty dirty. I then like to come along with something like an airbrush cleaner. Okay, we can put a bit of this on our paper towel, and then we can wipe this down, and what this airbrush cleaner does is it really gives it that final kind of nice all-round sort of clean. Okay, this is going to remove all sorts of oils, fingerprint marks, greasy fingerprint marks, okay, and really give us a nice clean surface to spray on. Okay, so now that wing there is all nicely ready for spraying. We've cleaned out our recess areas, and we've got rid of any kind of grease grime, fingerprints, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so before I start priming this, I need to go around, clean this all the way around, so I'll be back when this is all clean. So model's all nice and clean, ready for spraying. Make sure you use those latex gloves. Right, before spraying we need to prep all of our little bits and pieces, okay. Now what you basically do is you find any way you possibly can, using a bit of ingenuity, and just trying to get all your pieces in a fashion that you can nicely, easily spray it, okay. what you don't want to be doing is holding a piece, spraying one half, okay, wait for that to dry, and then spray the other half, okay. You want to just make sure, okay, just find out where this is supposed to be drilled, one sec. Okay, that's right. Okay, you just want to come along and in inconspicuous places, like on these bombs, okay, I know where I'm drilling now, okay, is where it's going to be glued onto the model, okay. So I've made a hole there knowing that it's going to glue onto the model. You're not going to see that hole because that's where it's going to be glued, okay. So then I can just come along, nice, simple, easy, cocktail stick in the hole, okay, and then that is a really nice way of spraying all of this bomb, for instance, without touching it. I can decal it, I can do the finishing weathering stages and then glue it onto the model right at the end, okay. Other little tips, you can cut the sprues. So here is this part of the sprue, leaving just one tab onto our piece. These are our gear bay doors, okay, so we can nicely spray both sides of our gear bay doors. We can decal them, we can weather them, and then right at the end we can just cut the tabs off, trying to be nice and neat. Maybe come along with a paintbrush and just put a little dab where that little tab meets the gear bay door, and you know, that's all done, and you've had nice easy access to it. You can also take tweezers, okay, and you can hold it like that as well. So that is a nice way of spraying those bits, and pretty much everything else is basically the same. I mean, we've got our propellers in here, you know, we've got bits of landing gear as well, okay, which we can also get tweezers and where. So this little pointy bit here, that's where it glues onto the model, so we know we ain't got to spray that, so we can hold that with a pair of tweezers, and that's what I'm going to just do now. So just it does depend on the piece and the way it comes off the sprue and everything, but try and use those little techniques and hopefully get all your pieces in a way where you want to be able to spray it all the way around, okay, have complete access to it, and you want to be able to spray it, decal it, weather it, and then just stick it on the model at the end, okay. So try and use those little techniques there. So I'm going to get these all prepped up for spraying, and then we're going to actually come along and give this its primer coat. Right, so as you can see here, I've come along and I've put all our little bits and bobs all on cocktail sticks and all ready to come along and spray them individually. And we've got our model all nice primed up, okay, sorry, not primed up, I mean all nicely clean, dust free, ready for priming, okay. Now primer, it doesn't really matter what primer you really use, okay. Normally some sort of a light grey is a nice colour to choose as a primer. In this case I'm going to use Sky Grey, which is XF19. This is by Tamiya, but really any kind of sort of cheap grey, so anything you want to use. I'm also going to use X28 to thin it down. Now I've got my airbrush here, okay. I'm just going to spray out a little bit of, what is it, Vallejo airbrush cleaner, okay. I always keep a little bit in there just to keep it fresh, so I've just sprayed that out, okay. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some X20A, and I want about a 50-50 mix, so I'm basically filling up this airbrush cup about 50%, okay. And what that does is, what you got to remember is, it's not just the cup that holds your paint and your thinners, but there's a little bit down here in the needle end that also gets paint and thinners. So by putting in the thinners first, what you're doing is you're giving yourself thinners in the needle end first, okay? If we put the paint in first, okay, we'd have paint down in the needle end, okay, just here on the airbrush, and then the thinners would be on top, okay? And that just makes for what it would be a neat thick paint down in the needle end, and when you first start to spray you could potentially already block your needle up before you've even started. So some nice thinners to start with will allow you to kind of blast through that bit of thinners at the start, so you don't get that blockage before you've even got started. So give our XF19 a bit of a shake, okay? We can open up and then we simply pour in about a 50-50 mix, okay? And that looks about right, okay? You could choose kind of whatever you feel like choosing to mix your paint together. I like to use a cocktail stick now and then, use sometimes a paintbrush, depending on, you know, how kind of temperamental the paint is. But Tamiya is quite a easy paint to spray, so I don't mind just using a quick cocktail stick. It just saves a bit of time, kind of keep cleaning a paintbrush to mix these thinners and paint together. Okay, so we've given that now a nice bit of a mix. We have got a little bit of drippage coming across here, so you want to make sure you clean off any kind of bits of paint that are kind of building up on the end around your cup, because what could happen is if it drips down too much, it could drip down all the way down to your needle end, and then when it hits the needle you get this big splatter of paint, and blobs of paint go all over your model and it looks a little nasty. Next thing you want to do is you want to check and make sure that your paint is spraying out the way you want it, okay? Because we've estimated a 50-50 mix and we might not be quite right. So by just coming along and testing it, okay, checking to see, oh, now see, I've kind of like shook a bit too much and I've just splattered a load of paint there, and it's just running down, and you can probably see actually it's just run down and it's probably going to end up on my needle and splat out. So we just make sure we clean that off, okay? But before that happened, our spray is looking rather nice, okay? Nice flow. So where do we start first? Well, it's kind of up to you. I do tend to like to start on the underside, okay, if we can get that to balance on there. And what you want to do is have it around about, say about the 20 psi mark. Okay, that should do the trick. So I'm on 20 psi, okay. And what you want to do is you don't want to spray too close to the model, okay, because if you do that you're going to get spidering, which I've talked about in other videos, where the paint just blasts and spiders out. You don't want to be too far away from the model as well, because if you're too far away, what can happen is the paint has actually, believe it or not, virtually dried before it's hit the actual model, and then you get rough surfaces. So you want to be maybe something like 4 inches away, and so you want to be about 4 inches away, and you just want to just slowly bring back the okay, because this is like a 2-action kind of airbrush. You push down for air and then you pull back for paint. So just slowly bring back the paint and get it the way you want it, and then just nicely spray the paint on the model, okay. Now the first coat, okay, because this is going on bare plastic, you want to just put a light misty coat on, okay. You don't want to have a first big pulled up coat of paint, okay? You just want to get some sort of, shall we say, something for the later coats to be able to adhere to stick to, give it something to hold on to and bite to, okay? So a nice light misty coat, okay, and just get it all over, okay? We're not some professional car sprayer and you're doing, you know, kind of like a nice kind of pattern, okay, where you just go in backwards and forwards and keep doing that, okay? You're not doing that. I mean, you don't have to, just keep it kind of a bit random as well, because it just gives it that bit of a sort of a randomness as well, which kind of helps the whole weathering process, although we don't have to worry about that at this stage because this is just a primer, okay? Careful not to hit the sides, okay? And we are just simply just nicely going all around with this nice light misty coat. Now you need to make sure you get in there and get all those, because I mean we've got all this engine part here, we've got our bomb pylons, okay? We need to make sure we get all the angles, okay? Now this is a bit of an awkward model because it is a bit on the big side, okay? So it's a bit of a pain to actually maneuver it around without it hitting stuff, so just be careful that you don't scratch your paint and stuff trying to move it around, okay? And then you want to make sure you get all your edges, okay? So you want to just come in and give a quick spray around the edges. Oops. Okay, this is a bit too big. It's being a bit of a pain at the moment. So you want to be careful not to touch it too much. Although the good thing about acrylics, it does dry rather quickly, and if you cut to air by just pressing down the needle, pressing down our button here and not pulling it back, you just get air and it does dry really quick, okay? So I'm just getting these leading edges, getting a nice light coat on these, okay? So you can see it's already looking a bit on the grey side, okay? And I won't worry about all this black. This black is just, it can be covered up. We will get it covered up, okay? And now we've got kind of a nice little coat down. We can then concentrate on putting a bit of a decent coat, okay? Yeah, just a nice decent coat, giving some nice bit of coverage, okay? Now as soon as you see it starting to look wet, okay, you don't want to keep spraying over it when it's wet, okay, because you don't want to have big pools up and build up of paint, okay? You just want it to get it to looking a bit wet and then move on and keep moving on, come back when it's dry and keep going until we've got a nice all-round primed up model. So I'm going to go around and prime this all up. At the same time, we've got all our little pieces on our cocktail sticks and stuff. We can nicely prime these up. Remember, nice little misty coats, then come along with another coat, just keep building up the coats, okay? So I'll be back when I've got all this nice. Right then, as you can see, we've got it all nice and primed up, and I have just literally finished spraying this, so it's still a bit wet. Now, what I forgot to mention before we primed up is why do we prime? First thing is it gives all our other coats to come something to adhere to, something to grip to, something to bite to, okay? Because spraying on bare plastic, you have to give it that misty coat just to kind of, you know, allow the next layers of paint to grip to the model, okay? And that's why we put a primer on, just to kind of prep it and everything. But the main reason really why you want to put a primer on is we can now check this model and make sure that everything is right, okay, before we do all the main painting. Now what I mean by this is once this primer's down, we get to see what our model, okay, is gonna look like basically when it's finished, okay? Because when you've just got bare plastic, you can't quite see all your seam lines or any kind of, like, you know, you may have done some scribing and maybe you've kind of come off a bit, okay? You're not really going to see it when you've got no paint down, but when you've got paint down, you can really look around your model and really see all the imperfections, all the kind of cracks, bits of, even down to bits of, like, I've got a little bit here, I've got a little bit of a few hairs, okay? I mean, we can look for them, rub them off, but the main thing is to look for those bits that you need to kind of make sure that are, you know, right. I mean, I have already noticed that we have got like a little gap here where our canopy attached to the model, there's a little gap there which we can come along and use our vallejo plastic putty. We can just apply a bit on, wipe it away with a cotton wool bud, then that gap's all nice and sorted and we haven't had to come around and do any sanding. We can look for, you know, like the seam lines going down here. If you've got one, you know, this is your last chance to come along, sand them out, fill them in, you know, do all those little bits just to get it looking all nice and perfect, ready for spraying. Now, okay, if you do find, say, a seam line and you have to fill it, sand it, maybe even scribe it as well, okay, it does mean you've got to clean your model again, you've got to quickly prime it again, but at least you're doing it now where it's just a primer coat and not doing it when you've done all your spraying and maybe you've done your decaling and everything. So really check your model now. This is kind of really your last chance to get rid of all these imperfections that are on your model, okay? Other thing is as well, I have got a bit of paint left, so I'll just quickly show you this. I've got a bit of paint left in my cup, and I will always say, if you've used, in this case I have, the same manufacturer thinners, there is no problems in you opening up your pot of Tamiya XF19 here, okay, and pouring it back in, okay? Doesn't matter if it's been thinned down a bit more, because it's only a bit of extra thinners, okay? Saves you a bit of paint, saves you a bit of thinners, okay? And then we want to do a nice little shall we say, a colour change, okay? So we can whack in, doesn't really matter, a bit of Tamiya extra thin, sorry, not Tamiya extra thin, Tamiya thinners, okay? And we can just put our kitchen paper towel, tip it upside down and give it a clean like this, okay? And what we're doing here, we're using gravity, okay, to bring down all the potential nasties or any kind of nasties or flaky bits or dry bits, okay? And we want it to come out of the cup end, okay? And we can give our little cup on the outside a rub. And what this does is, as you can see, it's all nice and clean in there, and it's all came out the cup end, not been sprayed out through the needle end, because any bits of dry bits, flaky bits coming out the needle end is just gonna create blockages, okay? So we can just blow out what's left in there. We can maybe come along with a bit more Tamiya X20A thinners, okay, blow that through. Okay, we can wipe our needle end. We could even, you've got this little guard that protects the needle, we could take that off and we can give our needle a bit of an extra wipe, okay, just to clean it that little bit better, okay. Then we can come along with some airbrush cleaner, okay, and I use Vallejo airbrush cleaner. You can dilute it 50-50 and we can just blast this through and keep blowing it. Now what you don't want to do is hold down and pull back and just hold it back the whole time, okay? It's not as effective as, put some more in there, as quick blasts and keep flicking it back. It just helps get rid of any nasties that little bit better, okay? And that now has had a nice colour change, and that is ready for the next colour now, okay? So that's all nice and clean. Right, so there are a few little minor imperfections, as I did say, on this model, which I want to come along and do a little bit of filler with the Vallejo plastic putty, because that's a nice clean way of doing some filling without any sanding, which if you can use that kind of filler at this stage, it just prevents you coming along and sanding and making a mess and all that kind of stuff. So try and use the Vallejo plastic putty technique as much as you can, but if you have to sand, you have to sand, and then you have to kind of re-clean and just kind of prime that area. So I'm just going to get those little bits done. It's nothing you don't already know. And then after that, I mean, really, once that's done, we're going to get down to putting some proper colours and proper camo pattern and bits of yellow down, and really kind of show you like the pre-shading, post-shading, bleaching and all that stuff. So I'll be back when that's all tidied up. Right then, I've tidied up all our little tiny little kind of cracks, little tiny mistakes, okay, after kind of seeing it all now primed up, re-cleaned, re-primed, and this is all good to start spraying. Now I'm going to start off with Vallejo 002 yellow, and this is like our engine section. We've got some flaps and tail area to do, and basically I'm doing this first, okay, because it's just a lot easier on all the masking and everything, rather than leaving the yellow till right at the end and having to mask up all round everywhere to protect all our paintwork. We can just crack on and not really mess about with all the masking. We can just kind of spray this yellow and then mask that. It's just a little bit easier. Now I am coming in neat, okay. I haven't put any thinners into the airbrush, and I'm spraying at about 25 psi. Vallejo paints are supposed to be slightly, shall we say, thinned down already, and they do say that you can spray these paints neat, okay. I personally feel they do need thinners, but in this case, because we're using yellow, yellow's one of those really pain colours, shall we say, that just takes coat after coat after coat to get a nice coverage. And by spraying this neat, it just reduces that whole keep on spraying. Because if I thin this, I'd be coming along and I'd be doing probably about 6 coats or something just to get a nice coverage, okay. But as you can see, it's actually going on quite nicely by spraying neat. But you do need a little bit more air pressure than normal. You can get the needle drying up a bit quicker as well, but if you keep wiping it, if it ever gets a bit too dry, shall we say, and start to clog up, you should be alright. Okay, and I'm just spraying about, 4 inches, 3 inches away from the model, and just getting that nice bit of coverage. Okay, and I don't have to worry about being all neat with this either, because we're going to mask this up all nice and neat. And after masking it all nice and neat, we're going to spray over, any unneat areas. So it is just blast this on, no messing about, nothing fancy. Okay. And as you can see, for this particular aircraft, these are the areas that are going to be yellow. Although I better double check. Nope, not quite. We've also got to spray up our propeller, some propeller parts. Okay, these need to be yellow as well. So just remember them. Better get inside as well. The other thing we're going to do with this as well, once we've got a good coverage, we are going to, shall we say, do a nice bit of weathering, a bit of the fancy spraying, okay, just to kind of weather this up, liven it up, because I do find if you don't weather things like yellow, they really can be a bit overpowering, a bit over the top. If you just kind of don't weather it up enough and leave it, you know, quite yellow, it really does kind of stand out from the rest of the model. It could be really overpowering, and I've even noticed, even though you can weather up yellow quite nicely, you can tend to sometimes, the pictures can be quite overpowering, although that's not how it looks to the naked eye. It's just how the pictures come out, okay? So that's the one thing to kind of remember about yellow. So what I'll do now is I'll make sure I've got a nice coverage of yellow going on all over this, and then we'll get down to some fancy spraying. Right then, so give this a nice couple of coats. In fact, there was about 4 coats still, so I mean it still took a bit of doing to get this all nice and yellowed, okay, and we're all done. So want to do some fancy weathering, so what we want to do is we want to do some bleaching first. Now with the bleaching, what you want to do is you want to add a nice amount of thinners, okay. We're potentially talking, I don't know, maybe 80% thinners to maybe 20% paint, okay. So we're talking a very thin paint going on here. So I'm just going to drop in a couple of drops into this paint, okay, just to make it nice and thin. And then I'm going to come along and I'm going to use Vallejo 001 white, okay, and what this is going to do, it's going to mix our original colour to a lighter colour, okay. So oops, maybe a little bit too much in there. We're going to mix this up now, and what we're going to have a more lighter version of our base colour, okay. So we give this a good mix, okay. So we're talking lighter and we are talking a lot thinner, okay. And what happens is, because we're so thin, we're going to get what's called a nice transparency effect going on, okay. So we just check to see what our flow's like, and that is looking a nice lot lighter. And what we do is we're going to be spraying on a thinner paint, so we're going to have transparency, and what the transparency does is you put on a different colour paint, which this is a lighter colour paint, and what it will do is, because it's so thin, it won't completely cover, it will only lightly cover our model, which means the original colour will still show through, okay. So if I just spray some of this on, okay, now I've just sprayed that on, and as you might see on camera, we've got a bit of a lighter effect going on, okay. And this is representing, shall we say, a bit of bleaching, you know, how the sun can kind of dull down certain colours and wear them down, and it just gives us that nice wear and tear kind of look, and it gives us something more than just a flat colour. And what you want to do is you want to aim for all the panels, okay. You've got your panel lines, okay, so you've got a square panel line, okay, one square panel line. You want to aim for the middle and kind of bleach that out, okay. And we can do that in all these little, oops, okay, now I've just accidentally done a little bit of spidering, Okay, so I want to just quickly try and wipe that off with a cotton wool bud. Okay, and that should be okay now. So if you ever have a little bit of spidering by accident, you know, just quickly wipe it off with a cotton wool bud. Don't rub too much because you're going to rub the original paint down. Okay, let's try doing some of these back panels. It might be easier for you to see. Okay. Now what you've got to remember is with the bleaching is try and slowly bring back the trigger, so you're just slightly bringing out the paint. You don't want it coming all the way out because you'll get spidering like I just got then. Okay, so we're just lightly bringing the needle back. Hold on. Okay, and we're just nicely bringing out our panels. Okay, nice and lightly. Okay, just like so. And then you could do a quick blast going across, very quick, so you just kind of quickly blend it in a bit more. Okay, and what we've got there is just a nicely bleached, slightly weathered our yellow parts. Now what you want to remember is when you put gloss coats on, it will make colours darker, and then when you put your matte coat on, say at the end, it's going to lighten it all up, and that process seems to like blend in this weathering we're doing now, bleaching and post shading. And if you want to go for a nicely weathered model, you might want to exaggerate at this stage the bleaching. Okay, you might want to have it a bit more bleached than you want it to, because the gloss coats and the matte coats are going to slightly dull down and merge the colours together right at the end. So if you go a bit more than you want, okay, you're probably going to get what you want at the end. If you do it the way you want it now, it's probably going to merge a bit and be a lighter amount of weathering at the end, which is probably not what you're after. Okay, so I'm going to carry on. Well, actually I could probably show you a bit more. And if you want, try not to also come along and, shall we say, try not to make perfect squares. Maybe wiggle it about a bit, maybe do some figure of eights. Okay, make it a bit messy, don't make it too uniform, don't make it all too nice and neat and looking like each panel has an equal amount of bleaching. Okay, they all weather at different rates, shall we say, and different ways, and we don't want to have everything looking exactly the same. Okay, and this now is almost nice and bleached. Okay, right, that's looking quite nice and good now. You can give your repeller bits a bit of a seam too as well, just to make sure they get a bit of bleaching. Okay, and there we go. There's one done. There's another. Right then, so we've done all our bleaching now. So what we also want to do, because we didn't do pre-shading, okay, which we'll talk more about that later, I'd like to do some post-shading. Okay, now post-shading is, shall we say, a bit hard. Okay, it's not that easy to do, and I would recommend that you get used to shall we say, bleaching and pre-shading before you do post-shading. Now what post-shading is is where you darken up all your panel lines after you've done all your spraying. So after we've done our main colour and we've put some bleaching down, what we want to do is we want to take our original colour and darken it up, okay, make it a darker colour than the original yellow, okay. So I would normally use black, but because we're using yellow, I'm going to just go for a burnt umber, okay, 040, okay. This is like a brown basically, and I'm just going to put a couple of drops in here just so that we can darken this up, okay. So we give this a mix. Okay, might be a bit too light, but we'll have a go with this. We can always mix up and give a few more tones if we want, okay. And what you do is with this is the careful part, okay. You need to have your paint nice and thin, okay, and you just, I like to come in quite close, okay, maybe like an inch away, but you've got to be careful about how much paint you let out. So when you pull the trigger back, you want to be pulling it back really slowly until you get that little bit of paint coming out, and then that'll be like your pre-shading. Okay, and the one thing you want to remember is as well, you don't want it to be some uniform type kind of coverage. You want to make sure that it's quite random, okay. You don't want to end up having lots and lots of perfect panel lines, all really kind of, you know, really nice and neat, and the same level of paint put on all over. You just want to keep everything as random, as messy as possible. You know, you don't want to be 100% in the panel on the panel lines. You don't want to be, you know, you want to just keep it random. Even if in some panel lines you don't even touch it, some panel lines you go a bit too heavy. Now this colour is a bit too light still, so I'm just going to drop some black in there to kind of darken this up a bit more, because this isn't exactly the way I want it, okay. And I think that one drop is going to give us a nice colour, a nice dirty colour, okay. And we need to spray through, okay, because we're always going to have paint in the needle end. When you mix in the pot, there's always going to be paint in the needle end, so you need to spray that out first to then start getting your colour, okay. So we're going to come back and we're going to try and nice and lightly, very randomly add this pre-shading, okay. I don't know how well you can see that, but I've just quickly put some post shading. We're talking post shading here. Put some post shading on there, and it's just given us, okay, this nice sort of, it's not a flat yellow. We've got a different type of colour in the middle of panel lines, which are lighter. Then we've got a darker colour on the panel lines, and it just brings out all the nice detail. It shows that we've got weathering going on, okay. We're trying to keep it random, keep it light, okay. You don't want to go mad. Now it can be a bit tricky to try and get the paint to come out, because you want it to just come out really lightly, because you don't want to blast this paint out. You just want to pull the trigger back a little bit, and it's a bit tricky to, shall we say, find the biting point. Trying to, you know, on a clutch on a car, you've got to bring it back just so you get that biting point, and that's what we're trying to get here. Trying to get the paint to come out nice and lightly, okay. And then you can, if you want, okay, we've just done that bit of pre-shading, but you might want to just take one area, okay. You might want to take one area like this, okay, and make it that bit heavier just in one little place, just to maybe show some real wear in a certain area. And it just kind of gives that nice extra effect by having these 1 or 2 areas that are kind of, you know, they've really got that post shading on. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you by doing the whole model, but those are kind of like the basic principles of doing some nice post shading. Just try and keep in mind, as I say, it is a bit tricky, it is a bit hard, but when we look at pre-shading next, well, sort of in a bit, we're gonna try and get you to kind of practice that more, get used to that, keep on doing that with models. And you know, the bleaching, that's kind of quite easy. You can try and get used to the bleaching, but post shading, I would recommend you don't really try and tackle that until you've done a couple of models with pre-shading and bleaching. So I'll be back when I've post shaded all this.